two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Delusions of Grandeur, where we are the Boris and Dave show. Today we have a film that was filmed in 1993, and it was directed by Ron Silver. It's a film called Lifepod, and it's a made-for-TV movie that I remember watching, and it haunted me because of certain scenes, because of its homage to Alfred Hitchcock, which we have covered a couple of Alfred Hitchcock here on our show. So I figured it was kind of related, especially since in Psycho 4, CC Pounder, or CCH Pounder, however you want to call her, was in fact playing in Psycho 4. So for some reason, I thought of this movie when it came to her. So I decided, well, why not? Let's go on about it. So just going to give a small synopsis that IMDb gives. So, Lifepod chronicles the trip of 8 passengers after the ship on which they were traveling blew up on Christmas Eve in 2168. Immediately, people start dying. The passengers begin to investigate why the ship blew up and how it relates to them. So, spoiler alert, first of all. As you well know, we will definitely spoil the shit out of this movie. But I figured at this moment I'd get first impressions. Why don't you tell me about your first impression of this movie, as you have seen it several times now?
Well, this is actually the second time I have watched it with you. I have to say the problem I've had is, as you know, I am not a native English speaker, and when I'm watching a movie without subtitles, sometimes I struggle to distinguish what was said. In this case, this movie is on YouTube, and that's where we watched it. The sound quality is not very clear, so I was struggling to distinguish the dialogue lines. So I occasionally struggled to figure out what was happening. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, was it the first time that you watched it that you got confused, or the second time? Because I think the second time around with my explanations. You did a little.
The first time I watched it was on Monday when we were going to discuss it, but it was postponed.
And you were a whole hell of a lot, and you were probably a whole hell of a lot more confused then than you are now.
Oh yeah, now I do understand things a bit better thanks to you. But
well,
yeah, now,
let's take a look at what the film what we have here. So apparently it's Christmas Eve, and there's a party going on this luxury liner of a spaceship, and we later learn is part of a spaceship company called EarthCore. Which is also in fact owned by Helix, or at least so far as we know. But we have an interesting cast here. I just want to say, I mean, we've got the midget that played Howard the Duck. Which I don't know if you know that movie or know of it, but there was a movie in the 80s that was done before Star Wars or around after Star Wars, and I think it was a George Lucas film, and it wasn't exactly a success at the time that it came out, but it was based on a comic book character at the time called Howard the Duck, where he is a duck that comes from outer space, and he somehow ends up on Earth and walks around and talks around, and that's basically his character. Well, the little guy who played Q3, that was him.
Oh, that's cool. I did hear of that movie, but I haven't seen it, unfortunately. But it sounds fun.
But we have Q3, who is played by Ed Gale. That's his name. And then we also have Director Banks, who is played by Robert Loggia. And Robert Loggia, he's had an interesting career too. Most people know him from Big, with Tom Hanks, and Independence Day as General William Gray, and Lost Highway, and Scarface. Some of those are some of the films that he's well known for. But he's had an interesting career. He was even on some of the original Alfred Hitchcock Presents as a very young man, in 2 episodes. So it's kind of fitting that he kind of was in this homage to Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat movie. It's called Lifeboat, where it was a 1944 or 46, I think.
Yeah, I read a bit about this after watching this movie.
Yeah, basically that film was on the sea, and a German U-boat had sunk a ship, and one of the people ended up being like the captain of the U-boat, and he didn't come off as he came off as being someone else. So you get kind of similar, the same storyline, except this time in space. So, but evidently, something happens, and their ship that they were on explodes, and a group of people end up going into this Lifepod, which is this backup unit on a ship, that apparently it's kind of an escape unit where if they had to use it, they could. What did you think about that? This whole beginning part. How confused were you at first?
Well, the main problem was that, especially in the scenes where there are loud sound effects and they overlap with the characters speaking, I was really struggling to distinguish the dialogue lines. That's the main problem because, like I said, I'm not a native English speaker, so when the sound is not entirely clear, I struggle to distinguish what they say.
I do believe that that beginning part was what was confusing at first. I mean, you get the little guy going down some kind of a tunnel inside the ship, and he sees something with tentacles, and all of a sudden the ship malfunctions, and he has to skedaddle out of there. And what's her name, Nadine, which we find out that's her name later. She tells him to get the hell out of there. They escape to the life pod with several other people, including someone from the planet of Venus, and some other passengers there. A blind man, someone who seems to be a political figure, at least within Earth Core, which is apparently the mining company that I believe that's what it was. It was a mining company
Oh,
that was sent to other planets to mine certain minerals. So
yeah. Well, now that you mentioned the tentacle thing, was it even explained in the end what it was? I didn't
it
understand.
well, apparently they had because of the look of it looked like an octopus. Okay, but
Yeah,
it was what did I call it? A fusion.
fusion. I think they said the fusion smelter or something
Yeah,
like that.
fusion smelter. It was Q3's character that figured out from the look and the sound and the make. They said that it had metal leads in it.
So the thing with tentacles was this fusion smelter.
Correct. The thing with
Oh,
tentacles was this fusion smelter. It's just they only found they when they were looking at the video of the ship exploding. And when Nadine was talking to them about what another person saw when they went down there, they were describing this machine, and Q3 could come up with it right in the moment, and that's when we get that Venus Venus girl. I'm just going to call her that for right now, at least until I can place her name. I think her name. Well, let's look at
uh,
the different characters. We have Director Banks, which apparently he's some important dude in the Earth Core thing, but apparently they think he's expendable. We got Claire St. John, which she is a reporter, and she's played by Jessica Tuck. We got Parker, who is played by Stan Shaw. Stan Shaw is an interesting character because he's played in a whole ton of things too. I'm just gonna mention some of the things he's been in. So he was in Monster Squad as Detective Sapir. He was in Cutthroat Island as Mr. Glasspool. He was in Daylight as George Tyrell, and he was in Rising Sun, among other films. I just figured I'd tell a few of these. I mean, he was in Fried Green Tomatoes as Big George. He was in Body of Evidence. He was in Harlem Nights. So to me, he was in Under Siege, which which I believe was okay. Yeah, that was from 1986. That was when they made movies longer. But yeah, I think he the first couple of movies he played in were Chuck Turner in 1974 and TNT Jackson in 1974. But he played Dipper in Rocky from 1976, which was a Stallone film.
wow, cool.
So, but yeah, and he was originally from Chicago, Illinois. So, but then we have Kane, which I believe he is the wasn't he the prisoner?
Yes, he was.
And then we've got Rena Januzia, which I believe she was the person from Venus.
Yeah, she was the one.
And let's see, I'm just looking. Okay, so she was in the Beauty and the Beast series from 1989. She was in the Case of the Hillside Stranglers, which was a TV movie. She was in Quantum Leap in one episode. She was in a movie called Zapped Again. Uh, My Life as a Babysitter. She was in a TV series called Elvis. She was in a TV miniseries called Switched at Birth. Let's see. This is getting into the Okay, so a little bit before here, she was in Crime and Punishment, and after this, she was in Snowbound, the Jim and Jennifer Stolpa story. There Goes My Baby. She was in Earth 2 as Mary, which was a science fiction television show.
Ooh.
See, just seeing if there's she was in a version of Flowers for Algernon, which is a very interesting movie. I like the movie, but I like the original film called Charlie better. That's a story about a someone with like something like Asperger's
Oh.
syndrome. He had a disability, and he went to special classes and he worked in a bakery. Charlie did, and somehow he got picked to become an experiment where they made his brain smarter, and he got to be friends with the smartest rat that they had already placed this drug in or given a drug, and he got smarter and smarter. He ended up getting with his teacher. You know, sometimes young kids have infatuations with their teachers. But then he ended up getting so smart that he realized that his rat, which was named Algernon, um, he was starting to get less smart, and he realized that he was not going to get much smarter. He was actually, I think, it's like it gave him a little bit of a smart high, and then it made him more dumber at the end of the film. It's like the experiment didn't work in the end, but he ended up having kind of a life that he never thought he'd have during the whole process. So, but anyways, that's not neither here nor there. Sorry, I really like the story. I read the book and all that jazz, but in any
That's perfectly fine.
um, let's see. We have like I said, an interesting cast of characters here. Um, where let's see, who else do we have? We have Q3, which Ed Gale. Not only was he in Howard the Duck, but he was in Spaceballs as one of the
Ooh.
Dinks, or some of the Dinks.
Oh, I saw that movie a long time ago, so
Uh,
I don't remember right now.
He was also one of Child's Play Chucky's stunt
Oh,
doubles.
wow.
He also was in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and I believe that he is actually still doing films from time to time.
Oh,
He
that's pretty cool.
he ended up playing in a Wisconsin Independent film of the voice of something, which I have a copy of the film. I just don't have a real copy a copy of the film. But Joseph K. Richards is the director of this film, and he played the voice of something in here. So it's called the Amateur Monster Movie. So, but that's not all that he's played in. He played in he played the voice either the voice of an elf in the Polar Express. Let's see, let's see, what else did he? Oh, he played in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. He played in the Weird Science TV series. He played Larry in the Munsters' Scary Little Christmas. Before this, he was in the night. Oh, he played. I don't know if you watched this, but I watched Land of the Lost in the '90s because there was a '70s show, Land of the Lost, but there was a '90s version, and he played this little character called Tasha in there
Oh,
for
no,
26 episodes, and he was also
I
in Mom.
haven't seen it. I'm sorry.
He was also in Mom and Dad Save the World, Dolly Dearest. He was in a TV movie called The Dreamer of Oz. He was in a trauma film called Chopper Chicks in Zombie
Huh.
Town. And he was a hooded dwarf in Phantasm 2. But his first movie that he's known for is Howard T. Duck, Howard the Duck. So, going backwards to okay, so we have CCH Pounder, who plays Mavine, not Navine, Mavine.
Yes.
And Ron Silver, the director of this film, he played Termaine, or Terman, the guy.
Oh,
So the director of the
wow.
film was also the protagonist.
Wow, well, that's quite an interesting detail.
And Woman with the Baby in Hyperstasis was played by Lisa Waltz. She didn't last too long, but she freaked. She was the one that freaked.
Yeah, yeah, no, it makes more sense.
Yep. So let's take a look at the plot here. So what happens is they find out as they go along, and what exactly happened, because they find out that someone brought a fusion smelter, which is apparently a mining machine or a mining thing that EarthCorp or Core had designed to dissolve or shape minerals that and destroy mineral or change minerals into what they need them to be. And someone brought it on the ship and used it to sabotage the ship. But we don't get that until like somewhat the middle of the movie, because you know they escape this into this life pod, and not only that, but they have to escape the debris from the blown up ship, and they don't quite do that. In fact, the ship gets a bunch of holes, and apparently some of these holes trickle some radiation into the cockpit, which start to deteriorate the character of Maydeen.
Yeah, true. That was kind of painful to watch.
Yes, it was, because not only was she molting, she was what happened to her was also grotesque, almost. I mean, you get a sense of her dying and realizing that she's going to die, and then of course they go through that comet later on, and that pretty much takes care of the rest of her, because the debris from the comet breaks through the ship's stuff, and basically she's done for. But all throughout, while this is happening, they do a rationing thing and figure out what food they have, and it looks like their food was much of the food was in fact gone through. Like someone from the party might have actually gone into the life pod and like opened up a couple of packets or a lot of the packets, and because they were whatever, What did you think about seeing some of the supplies all ripped open like that?
Well, at first I didn't fully realize what it was because, as you said, in space they eat different food from what we have here. So as I wasn't able to distinguish the dialogue lines very well, at first I didn't realize what those things were.
Well,
But yeah, now, and I know what it was. Yeah, I guess it kind of posed a mystery who is doing this whole thing.
well, it ends up being kind of a whodunit kind of a thing because if someone came and sabotaged the ship, then that person would have to be one of them, and they didn't know who to point the finger to, and it definitely was a um, interesting way that they found out who it was in the end.
Yeah, definitely.
But we have a selection of characters here. One of them is pregnant, and she goes nuts a little bit because they're stuck there, and then somehow she ends up dying, and they don't know why. And they found one of the water packets stuffed down her throat. So that's why they think that there was some foul play there. Not only that, we have Q3 who has a mechanical arm. He seems to be very. He seems to be the leader of all of them at the moment because he's tech. He's evidently a person with some kind of authority, and evidently he's given his arm for the tech that he has in his arm. And I actually kind of like his mechanical arm for some reason. I mean, he can switch heads on that thing like nothing else. I mean, he was able to put a saw to because I believe the character of Parker, he when the debris went through the ship, he was trying to weld the inside of the ship, and then he got injured during the debris coming through, and ultimately he ended up getting addicted to that morphine gun. What did you think about that aspect of him?
Well, one thing I definitely have to say is that the actor who was playing Parker, he really did an amazing job at portraying that feeling of agony of what the character was going through with his injury and his leg becoming I forgot what the word was, but when it deteriorated further, and
he got gangrene, which is
yeah,
which is when flesh rots to the point where it's beyond compare, and that's what it turns into, gangrene. That's what we call it.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say he really did a great job at portraying how the character felt in those moments, that feeling of agony, of the pain caused by the deterioration of his leg, and like he could really make you feel sorry for the character.
Oh yeah, and the fact that the one guy, Ron Silver, his character, I believe, Terman, he was also a Venusian, someone from Venus, and he carried himself off as this blind man, at least to the rest of the people there. And he there was a moment where he's saying every single one of us could have sabotaged that ship. Every single one of us has an excuse why they would have sabotaged the ship in any case. I mean, Q3, he sacrificed his arm for these people.
Yeah, that is kind of terrifying. Like, no matter how cool the mechanical arm is, it's scary to imagine having to lose your real arm for that.
Correct. And he was quick to point the finger at everyone. At first, he was nonchalant about it, but he definitely knew how to show the others that, while they were figuring all this out, every single one of them had motive.
Yeah, when I was watching the movie for the second time, when I already knew that Terman was the bad guy, it was really interesting to see some of those things he said when you already know that he is the one, and the way he is hiding it by analyzing the others and speculating who might be doing it and why, when it's actually him.
It's like he's like this character where he can sit back and just watch all the chess pieces play themselves out. He's a calculating character where he sees everything in his mind the way he wants it to go, and that's why he's the one to put a stash away of food and water and shit so that he could escape himself if need be. So, but we don't see that it's him right offhand. We just see that someone is stashing shit away. But not only that, but apparently the news. Well, the most annoying character to me at first was Claire St. John. Every time she'd pull out that recorder, and it was the reporter in her.
Yeah.
And other people were like, "You hide behind that camcorder because that's who you are." Things of that nature. So.
Yeah, well, it somewhat makes sense if that's the job you're doing. It kind of becomes a part of you over time.
Well, yeah. So this film kind of deals with isolation. It deals with things that happen naturally. Eventually, the holes in the life pod were draining the air from the ship. So Tech Q3 had to figure out a way to get them more air. He found a way through some of the electrical currents within the ship. The only thing is, even though they got more air, they were relatively floating, drifting, much closer to a sun. What sun, I don't know. All I know is that they were drifting.
Well, since they were talking about Earth and Venus, they mentioned Jupiter and so on. I guess it's our sun, but who knows? I guess.
That's another thing. We've got the character of Rena Janusia, and she's kind of cute. To say one thing, I mean, she may have kind of a muscular, mannish kind of a body, but she was kind of cute. But she was tough.
Yeah.
And we learned why. Evidently, she'd been part of some concentration camps that evidently the mining corporation was hiding. That they had these camps. So, in a sense, I was getting a possibility that this Earth Core was more or less like the Nazis and the Germans. Uh,
Yeah, I do see the similarity.
I mean, there were lashings on her back that she showed. I mean, and of course, we got a little bit more fleshed out story from the prisoner. When they first came into the life pod, he was already there.
Uh, yeah, they kind of made him seem like someone we should suspect, but then he turns out to be a good guy after all.
Yeah, he does. After starting to go through some form of hyperthermia, of course, Claire St. John gets a recording of that little segment where apparently he was the first person in his family to get a job that was other than day labor, which I don't know what day labor was, but I'm assuming that it's some kind of other labor that is more or less like a like working in a warehouse or working in a slum, you know.
Possibly. Uh,
But
like I said, I didn't manage to distinguish much of what they were saying.
well, I'm just explaining. At least, I mean, I was paying attention more this time around than I have previously, and I think I've seen this film about 3 times now, including this time.
Uh,
And each time it seems like I catch more, and there's more to it, more to the story
well,
than I saw before. So,
that makes sense, yeah.
but you get a sense that there's a political background around with the two different factions. You got the Earth Core, which apparently has something to do with something called Helix, which the reason why I think it's a mining company is because Janusia, she was talking about the mining colony on Venus. So to me, I put two and two together, where it may be that Earth Core is in fact a mining developing company for other planets. So, but apparently there is a board of executives on Earth Core that apparently we're trying to point using this disaster to point the finger at rebels from Venus and using that explosion to put them under the bus, so to speak.
Um, yeah, I think that was it in the end. Mm,
And it was just a matter of eliminating who might have been the original saboteur amongst them. And the plan was to take them out one by one and pit them against each other, at least until he got a chance to escape whoever it was that was doing this. But like I said, all throughout this, CCH Pounder, her character, Maydeen, she was the one piloting this life pod. And we see some very good, and I would have to say, very good representation of what it's like for someone who's exposed to radiation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't really know what that looks like in real life, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But as far as I saw in the movie, yeah, it did look well, like I said, painful to watch.
Yeah, it was, and I think that's what I remembered about this film. I mean, in the very end, when the comet came through, well, towards the end, not in the very end, it was like kind of three-quarters of the way into the movie, where they end up going through debris within a comet, and the ship didn't have much protection. So when she was up there, she caught much of whatever was in that comet, and basically it finished her off to the extent where she just died. And you see her circling. I mean, you don't even see her in the chair. You see her through the video camera, through the static, and that's what's even more frightening.
Indeed.
I mean, they use a lot of things. They use the cameras from different angles. You get a view through the camera that the news uh, the the reporter Claire has. I mean, you get to see what's inside her camera, at different moments.
Yeah, well, her camera plays a very important role by the end of the movie.
Not only that, the reporter found out. Well, she tasted some oil in the water, and they went. Well, Janusia, she it went over to check the water supply, and it turns out that there's a hydraulic pipe or tube that's connected to the water, and it made the water contaminated. So they had that going on, where they thought their water supply was water. It was in fact diluted with something that could kill them. So,
Mm,
which made their rations a little bit less too. So they had to go without water.
yeah.
But what did you think about the rest of the crew? Um, uh, uh, um, did you like it? Was there anyone in particular that you entirely enjoyed their performance?
Well, there is quite a bit I could say. For example, I liked the character of Rena throughout the movie. She kind of had this protagonist vibe, kind of like Ellen Ripley in the Alien movie. I thought she would be the one to survive at the end, so I was really shocked when she got killed. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, you mean the Rena Genusia character?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
she was the one that I think that I think well, besides Dean, she was the one of the ones that I actually felt for, um, when it came to some of the passengers. I mean, she had a rough life, and to have her life snuffed out like that, just because Earth Core wanted to wanted to just make them disappear because they were just pawns in their game of chess. The,
yeah,
politically to point the finger at her race, and in order to cover that up, they needed to get rid of them because he sabotaged the ship, and he needed to escape, and they started to realize that. So that is why they became expendable. Nobody was supposed to survive this.
mm, Yeah, I also liked Q3. He was cool.
I thought he was cool too. I mean, he could get down there in those crevices of the ship fairly easy enough, and he was he was tech savvy, so he could technically do Madine's job if he really wanted to. But you know, he was kind of the one to keep order, so to speak. I mean, what when there was a moment where the prisoner took a knife out, and the director Banks, he had a gun, and he took both the gun and the knife from them, and he kept the peace, so to speak.
Yeah,
What did you think about that a moment? I mean, he wasn't exactly denying those accusations against him, but he wasn't exactly, you know, being forthright with them either.
you mean the prisoner?
Yeah, the prisoner. He
Huh.
made himself look guilty by not answering, you know?
Well, actually, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in the end, when he did reveal what happened to him, it turned out he had not really done much wrong. So,
No.
why wasn't he honest about it since the very beginning?
Well, yeah. Although maybe he thought that maybe people wouldn't believe him, they just all wanted to point the finger at him anyways, make him be the
Oh,
scapegoat. So maybe they might
yeah,
not believe him at that moment.
yeah, that makes sense.
But um, yeah. What do we think about Director Banks?
Well, he seemed like, well, he was a good guy, and it was sad how he ended. And I mean, I was actually going to say, I kind of feel like at the end of the movie when Thurman killed Rena and Q3 and director Banks, I kind of felt like. Those deaths weren't really necessary because it was already the end of the movie. Like they killed them off only to increase the body count. But I felt like the story didn't really need those three to die. So I guess that would be my issue with this story.
True. Um, and as they were, um, oh, not only that, but they were headed towards what they thought was a space hotel. At first, and they kept giving each other hope because apparently that's where 2 days from there, if they could hold out long enough, they could go to that space hotel, which ended up having either a meteor shower destroy it or something happened to it because it had several big assholes in the sides of it, and it was completely empty and devoid of human life.
Oh, yeah, you make a good point. I mean, if in the end it turned out that Thurman was the one who was sabotaging the whole thing all the time, if this was done by him as well, how did he manage to do that from the life pod?
Well, yeah, it just seemed like everything was against them. Hey, the
Yeah, I
odds
mean,
were stacked against them. They just weren't going to get out of it at any time soon. So after realizing that, it seemed like all hope was lost. And then on top of it, they are going through some of the video that the reporter had recorded, and the prisoner Kane. he saw that the Ron Silver's character had ducked when something was thrown in his direction, which means that he's not a blind man. He can fucking see.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
when they shined the light at him and he turned away, that's when he was kind of somewhat found out.
indeed. Well, that's interesting. The way they discovered him by seeing him duck in the background of a recording. That was quite creative, although I would say for today's standards, after all these Who's Done It movies that we've seen, I mean, back then when this movie was made, maybe it wouldn't be so easy to suspect a character like him, but nowadays, after all the movies we've seen, it's kind of not so difficult to think he is blind. What if they did it on purpose so that we don't suspect him, and what if it actually is him and we would be correct?
Well, this was his first directorial movie and his last movie he directed,
Whoa.
to be sure. But he was in the TV series Rhoda in 1975 to 78. He was in 34 episodes of that. He was in Having Babies, Murder at the Mardi Gras, Betrayal. So he was a TV actor because these are a bunch of TV movies and TV series. Dear Detective, he was in as Dr. Schwartz. The Stockard Channing show, Word of Honor, Silent Rage. He was in. Oh, oh, I remember him in that one. He was in a movie called The Entity. The Entity was a movie that involved a spiritual rape.
I'm sorry, I had a sound glitch. A spiritual what?
Rape.
Oh.
A benevolent spirit that was haunting this family actually raped her. Raped the one of the main characters in the film. We'll have to cover that eventually. But he was also in Silkwood, Romancing the Stone, Oh God, You Devil, which is part of the Oh God series. I guess he was in Cain and Abel, a TV miniseries. Let's see. He was in Wise Guys, which was a mob TV series. Let's see. Married to It, The Good Policeman, Mr. Saturday Night. He was in Time Cop as McComb. Let's see. Deadly Outbreak. He was in The Arrival as two different people, Phil Gordian and a Mexican guard. He was in Shadow Zone, The Undead Express, Danger Zone, Skeletons, Rhapsody in Bloom, The White Raven, Love is Strange. A lot of these are TV movies. So Rats, a TV movie, RATZ. Ali, Exposure, Master Spy, the Robert Hansen story, The Wisher, Jack, a TV movie, Red Mercury, Find Me Guilty, The 10, Xenophobia in 2008, and A Secret Promise in 2009. Oh, he died in March 15th, 2009 at age 62. Which was actually relatively young.
Indeed.
But he was born in New York City and he died in New York City. So, but I think that this kind of immortalizes him, kind of, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
This is the only film that he ever directed, and he's the bad guy in it. So,
Yeah, he orchestrated the whole thing both in real life and in the movie.
yep. So it was an interesting conundrum. Did you enjoy the film?
Yeah, well, like I said, I struggled to understand it a bit, but now that I saw it for the second time with you, I understood it much better, and I may see it again and see what else, what other details I will catch. But yeah, it's a very good movie, and it really does a good job at portraying this heavy atmosphere, and the actors did a great job.
Well,
Yes, but
it was basically done in one location almost. Too. I mean, yeah, parts of it because what's her name was up in the cockpit bit. That might have been somewhere else, but I feel like this. Okay, so I'm just looking to see if it shows exactly where it might have been filmed. No, it doesn't tell me where it might have been filmed. Sometimes it tells me the filming locations, and right now it was filmed in the USA. The language was English. The release date was June 28th, 1993. So I guess the film has also been known. Well, Lifepod is its original title, and in Sweden it was Lifepod. In Norway it was Lifepod. In Hungary it was Mento Cabin. In Germany it was Sabotage im All, or Die Terrorkapsel. In Bulgaria, I don't even know what it was in Bulgaria, but in Portugal, it was 2168 Perigo no Escapo.
I don't really know what it means. I mean, it's not a literal translation, right?
Right. Let's see, trivia. Let's see. The film takes place before December 2168 and January 2169. So I guess that's the trivia that it says. But let's see, quotes. Okay, here's some quotes. Because we did talk about the special effects a little bit already. We didn't talk about favorite scenes, but I figured I'd say some of these quotes. What would you feel if you had to chop off your arm and replace it, just so you could earn an extra 50 credits a day?
Oh, yeah.
My parents were born in Kansas. Well, we're not in Kansas anymore. My ex-husband didn't make any bones about being a publicity whore. He knew why he married me. Did he know why you were marrying him? Sure. It was for the great sex. This is from director Banks referring to Claire's ex-husband. His Earth Court file contains some rather interesting videos. I believe the term is explicit, director. I know. I took them. Rena, you know how on Venus, Earth Corp uses cameras like that to spy on people. If you aim it at me again, it's going to end up recording parts of your anatomy you never knew existed.
Oh yeah, that was one quote that I memorized. That's a pretty funny one.
Is that what triggered your aversion to people with money? People with money triggered my aversion to people with money. Is someone turned my back into a road map, I think I'd be capable of almost anything.
Mm. Yeah, some of these quotes, when you read them out of context, they kind of make you imagine more humor in the movie than there actually is.
Well, and here is the last quotation that I see here. It's happening again. What is? Once a while back, a bunch of us got caught in orbit around a moon, going round away from the sun, into the cold and dark. With all you could hear was the sounds of those who began to die. How many? How many on board? 11. How many survived? 1.
Ooh.
I have to admit that Q3 thing where he just didn't want to. He was caught in a similar situation, and well, not really, but he was marooned, around a moon.
Yeah.
And if you've ever heard anything about the dark side of moons, you don't really want to be stuck there because it gets cold. And it definitely will be a long time before you see the light of day again.
Oh.
So, but he didn't want to watch this happen again, So that's kind of why I felt for his character.
It did.
But in any case, if there was a favorite scene from this film, what would it be that you would take away from it?
Phew. Well, that's an interesting question. I guess it would be the scenes where they realize that Thurman is the bad guy. The whole thing when they flashlight at him, and the previous scene with the camera when they see him in the background of the video where he ducks, and that makes them think he might not be blind after all those details that lead to the plot twist. That's a pretty interesting part. And also, I have to say, the actor who played Thurman really did a great job at playing a blind man, or a man who was pretending to be blind. I mean, I wouldn't even know if I tried to control my eyes to make myself appear blind. I would have no idea how to do it. So,
I agree. I mean, I think that he played a very good part where he could just sit back and you could relax, shit like that. So, me, I'm not sure I would have that much patience to just watch the players play out, and take
it
my
did.
moment when I saw fit to escape.
It did. Well, the character was horrible, but the actor did a great job.
Oh yeah, I agree. And this was supposedly based on a short story, I guess, that of Alfred Hitchcock's. I don't really know the short story because it says short story, but I thought it was based on Lifeboat, which is definitely not a short story.
Mm,
It's an
yeah.
entire feature. So
Huh. I don't know.
I'm just looking at the producers. Okay, so the music itself behind the film was put together by Mark Mancia, and he was behind. He was the composer behind Disney's Tarzan, Speed, the movie Speed, Twister, Con Air, Bad Boys for Life, Scary Movie 4, Over the Hedge, Brother Bear 2, um, The Lost Medallion, The Adventures of Billy Stone, Brother Bear, Bad Boys 2, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, Tarzan and Jane, Training Day, Houdini, the 1998 TV movie. Speed 2, he was the music arranger for that. Mal Flanders, he was the conductor for that. Poltergeist: The Legacy, the TV series, he was a composer for additional music on there. Lion King, he was an additional vocal arranger and a composer of some of the additional music, and he was uncredited for that. He was the producer of the music for Monkey Trouble, True Romance, Sniper, Days of Thunder, and The Bounty Hunter from 1989.
Cool.
So, other than that, did you have anything else to add to Lifepod?
Oh, well, I'm not sure. I think we have discussed everything. Maybe if I saw it one or two more times and caught some more details, then maybe I would have something more to say.
Most definitely, but I think we did had a decent discussion here. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to our chatter here.
Yeah, thank you.
It was an entertaining movie to watch, and it was a tough movie to go through because there was so much that went on with this, and so much that I ended up catching this time around than my last two. And hopefully, I gave it some definite, definite love, because there were some haunting scenes from here. Maybe some of the CGI from it hasn't aged as well, and I would think that maybe a Blu-ray of this would actually be beneficial for this film, so that maybe others could see this film and see it for what it is. I wouldn't mind checking out Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat next week, just for the sake of what this film homaged to. It paid homage to that film. We might as well go back and see why they felt it was necessary, or even remotely, to pay it some homage or homage, and see it for ourselves. So,
It did.
in any case, thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, and morning, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Check some of our other discussions out. I'm sure you'll find most of our discussions intriguing. I mean, it's self-explanatory that you can get confused if you're.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being confused. It's because my listening skills aren't very good when it comes to foreign languages.
Well, that's okay. I caught most of what was going on, and I think through my understanding, it was more or less and helped you understand it. So
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
so, in any case, enjoy the discussion, ladies and gentlemen, and I look forward to talking about Lifeboat in the future. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night.